Hi, and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. This is your host, John Strazicich, and today we'll be continuing here in Hebrews chapter 7. Finally, yay, we made it to Melchizedek, and today is going to be seriously just like the author said there, back in, what was it? The earlier chapter, that this is an extensive message and hermeneutically difficult to interpret. This will bear out here today, but let's just stick with the text, and we will we'll have a better footing at how to approach and interpret what the author has to say. So today is going to be a very, very exciting day. Okay, so typically what we normally do is we just do a rundown through the passage that we're going to work on here today. And today will be no exception. So let me just go ahead and run through the text here with a rough translation here. So we'll start off here. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham parted a tenth of all. First, on the one hand, being interpreted king of righteousness, and then on the other, king of Salem, which is king of peace, being without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but having been made like to the Son of God, he abides a priest continually. But see how great this one is, to whom Abraham gave a tenth of all, Abraham the patriarch gave a tenth of all of the spoils. And also, those on the one hand who receive the priesthood of the sons of Levi have a commandment to receive tithes of the people according to the law. That is their brethren. Likewise, as also having come out of the loins of Abraham. But the one who does not have a genealogy of them received tithes of Abraham, and he blessed the one who had the promises. And apart from all contradiction, the lesser is blessed by the greater. And here, on the one hand, men who receive tithes die, but there, being testified that he lives, and so to speak, the one who received tithes paid tithes through Abraham while he was yet in the loins of the Father when Melchizedek met him. Okay, that was a little rough there, but anyhow, so this is our text that we're coming to here, and we've got right here verses 1 to 3 is one big long sentence. And basically the gist of this sentence is, for this Melchizedek remains a priest continually or forever. Everything else is filler. It's just apposition after apposition, and then circumstantial clauses filling in information about mene here, which specifically we're talking about here, verse 3. All of verse 3 is going to be circumstantially related to mene, elliptically through own or through eschon here. So, and then we have a couple here of relative clauses here, but that's all dealing with the subject. So anyhow, and this is all about Melchizedek. This has nothing really so much to do with the priesthood, other than that it just says this Melchizedek abides a priest forever. So it's about Melchizedek's about himself. Look how verse 4 starts off. See how great this one is. It's not talking about see how great his priesthood is. It's talking about the greatness of Melchizedek. So that needs to be, we're going to be a stickler on exegesis. We're not doing eisegesis on this text. We're not performing the typical, Zeitgeist interpretation. We're not doing the typical Zeitgeist interpretation on this text. We're following the text, and we're paying very close attention to what it says. And what it says, I'm going to own. Whatever this text says about Melchizedek, you got to own it. And I'm not going to, we're not going to water this down. We're not going to dilute it. And whatever it says, I'm going to just follow the text where it goes. And then we are going to look at some, we're going to even look at Qumran here today, which will shed some light on this particular text. But anyhow, there's a lot going on here, and to get some context, I think we need to look at the historical text back in Genesis where Melchizedek is mentioned, because he's only mentioned twice in the Old Testament. Once here in Genesis 14, and then the other by David in Psalm 110. And then Hebrews grabs onto it and then creates a whole midrash. So this is a midrash on Melchizedek. That would be my title here, exegetically, for what's going. It's a midrash on Melchizedek, not on Melchizedek's priesthood. The verses 1 to 10 focuses on the person of Melchizedek, and verse 3 here. Just look at the way this is one big sentence, and the grund. The ground, the baseline is for this Melchizedek remains a priest forever. So that's your main sentence. That's your main, that's the, the independent main clause, and everything else is filler. Okay? It's all descriptive. Either of Melchizedek or of the verb here with some circumstantial adverbial clauses, adverbial participles, even one elliptically, and then some subordinate relative clauses. So, hey, this is what it is, and then this is all about see how great this guy is, Melchizedek is, to whom Abraham gave a tenth. So it's not, it transitions later to talk about the, the priesthood. But here, the main focus is on the person of Melchizedek. And see what happens is you're going to find a lot of interpreters, when they're actually working through this text, they jump. They're no longer talking, they don't want to talk about Melchizedek, who he is. They don't want to stick with the text. They want to focus on Melchizedek's priesthood. And that's not the focus here. And verse 4 proves it right here. Okay? It talks about, see how great this one is. Not his priesthood is, but this one, as in a person. Okay? And just the way this one sentence here, this periodic sentence, it starts off here, for this Melchizedek abides a priest forever. That is so technically, this is so artistically written. It'll blow your mind. This has more theology. Just visually seeing this has more theology. It's what's not said. It's how this whole text is constructed, which is amazing. And it just goes to reinforce, the greatness of Melchizedek. Okay, so since I piqued your interest here, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, now coming here to Genesis 14:1, we'll pick up the Hebrew text here, and we'll just go ahead and read through the chapter. It's not all that long. Vayehi b'mei Amraphel melech Shinar Arioch melech Elasar Kedorlaomer melech Elam v'Tidal melech Goyim. So this is the way the text starts off, and so we'll go ahead and I'll just go ahead and read through it. And it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim. They made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinav, king of Admah, and Shemitah, king of Zeboim, and King Bela, that is Zoar. All these joined in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea or the Dead Sea. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. Okay, so we'll just stop there. So what we can see here is that Kedorlaomer is the suzerain, and there's only one time in history, just right at the time of Abraham, right after the Ur-3 dynasty broke up, there was a little time there where there's only once in history where Elam was able to take hegemony over Mesopotamia and all the way to the Levant. And you can see here, and so this, what we'll see here, we'll look at Kenneth Kitchen, what he has to say here about this time frame. There's just one little part of history where this takes place. And I remember Tammy Schneider, one of my professors at Claremont. She was our ancient Near Eastern professor, and she also mentioned this as well. So this is established in the minds of scholars. So this time slot really works well here, where Kedorlaomer can be the suzerain over his vassals that are in Mesopotamia and all the way down to Sodom and Gomorrah. So anyhow, so we see here that in Sodom and Gomorrah and the other three kings there with him down by the Dead Sea, they were vassals unto Kedorlaomer, and they served him for 12 years. And it says here, in the 13th year, they maradu, they rebelled. And so we'll pick up the text here in verse 5. And in the 14th year, Kedorlaomer came, and the kings which were with him. So finally in verse 5, you kind of see that Kedorlaomer takes his pride of place. I think the reason why we had Amraphel here first is because when the text was written, people were focused more on Mesopotamia, so that's probably why Amraphel would have been mentioned first, because Elam, by the time the Pentateuch became a written document, Elam was the ancient Elam was in the background. People would have been more familiar with Mesopotamia, so it's probably a reason why the text is written the way it is. Okay, so in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer came, and the kings with him, and they struck the Rephaim that were in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim with them, and the Amim in the valley of Kiryatayim, and the Horites in the mountains of Seir, unto El Paran, which is at the wilderness. And they returned and came to Ein Mishpat, that is Kadesh, that is, Kadesh Barnea, and they struck all of the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hatzon Tamar. And the king of Sodom went out, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king Bela, that is of Zoar, and they arranged themselves for battle in the valley of Siddim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. And the valley of Siddim was had pits and pits, lots of tar pits. And the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and they fell there, and those who were left fled to the mountains. And they took all of the substance of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food and left. And they took Lot and his substance, the son of the brother of Abraham, and they went, and he was dwelling in Sodom. It's talking about Lot. And an escapee came and declared to Abraham, the Hebrew, and he was dwelling in the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and they are masters of a covenant with Abraham. And Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, and he emptied out his trained men, those born of his house, 318, and pursued unto Dan. Okay, and he divided himself against them at night, he and his men, and they struck and they pursued unto Hova, that is to the left of Damascus. That would be the north of Damascus. And he returned all of the substance, and also Lot, his brother, and his substance he returned, and also the men, the women, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after he returned from striking Chedorlaomer and the kings which were with him in the valley of Shaveh, that is the valley of the king. And Melchizedek, so here we go. So we have Melchizedek. This is the mention here. And Melchizedek, king of Shalem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of El Elyon. And he blessed him and said, "Blessed is Abraham of El Elyon, possessor of heaven and earth. Blessed is El Elyon, who has delivered your foes in your hand, and he gave to him 1/10 of all." And the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give to me the souls, and the substance keep for yourself." And Abraham said to the king of Sodom, "I have raised my hand to Yahweh El Elyon, possessor of heaven and earth. I will not, you have to come down. I will not take from a thread unto a strap of a sandal from all which belongs to you. And you shall not say that I have caused Abram to be rich. Besides only that which the men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, Mamre, they shall take their part, or their division. Okay, so this is the text. This is the primary text here of really the only place in the Old Testament where we have a mention of Melchizedek, talking about the person, the man of Melchizedek. Because the only other place we have Melchizedek mentioned is in Psalm 110, and so it's just there. It's mentioning that the future messianic king will also be a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So that's what Psalm 110 focuses on, is on the priestly nature of the future messianic king that will rule as co-regent, that David saw in this vision that he recorded in Psalm 110. Okay, so here what we have this character called Melchizedek, and we don't know nothing about him. He just appears on the stage of history. He left. If David never would have said anything about him, nothing ever would have been, much done with it. That would be my guess. But since David mentions that the future messianic king will also be a priest, well, then that began to get people to think theologically about, let's go back and revisit, who is this Melchizedek, so what we know from the text here, he's king of Salem, which is an ancient term for Jerusalem. So the Shalem here, Melech Shalem, this here is Jerusalem, and it definitely doesn't refer to any other city. This is specifically Jerusalem. And Malchi, my king is righteous, Zedek. Some people look at this as the old form of the genitive, king of righteousness. But since it's written just like this, Malchi, we'll just look at it that it could most people would look at this and say, my king is righteous, is Zedek. So anyhow, there's a little etymology here, but there is, remember, you got to remember that this yod here, there is an ancient form of it that picks up on the genitive, which we'll see actually what the author of Hebrews does with it. He takes it as that. So anyhow, so what does he do? He meets Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings, and he brings out for Abraham and the men with him bread and wine, and it states that Melchizedek is the Kohen of El Elyon, of God Most High, and that when he meets him, it says that he blesses him, and he says, "Blessed is Abraham of El Elyon." Possessor, or you can konen here, the participle. It could be very creator of heaven and earth. Basically, what it means here. It has a wide variation of meaning here. It may be best here just to translate creator of heaven and earth. But he's the one who occupies heaven and earth. That is what we want to maybe pick up from konen here, is that the Creator is the one who possesses and inhabits heaven and earth. And then he further says, "As blessed is El Elyon, who delivered your foes into your hand." And then it says, "Vayiten lo maaser mikol," and that is this refers to Abraham. And Abraham gave to him, that is Melchizedek, a maaser mikol, a tenth of all. And then 21 goes on about the transactions between the king of Sodom and Abraham's oath not to take anything from him. Okay, so we don't have to worry about 21, but this is the primary text coming to us from the Old Testament, and it's very historical in nature. And we'll see this in the next slide. So here, Kenneth Kitchen has this to say: after an interval of Gutian interference, Mesopotamia was then dominated by the third dynasty of Ur, whose influence reached some form as far west as North Syria and Byblos. After its fall, about 2000, Mesopotamia was divided between a series of kingdoms: Isin, Larsa, Eshnuna, Assyria, with Mari and various local powers in lands further north and west. This situation lasted until the 18th century, when Hammurabi of Babylon eliminated most of his rivals. From circa 1600 to 1500 onward, Assyria and Babylon, now under Kassite rule, dominated Mesopotamia, sharing with none except briefly Mitanni, about mid-15th century to 13th century, within the Euphrates West Bend, and marginal Kana and Sealand princedoms were eliminated in due course. Thus, from about 2000 to 1750, or 1650 at the extreme, we have the one and only period, this is important, we have the one and only period during which extensive power alliances were common in Mesopotamia with its neighbor. Alliances of 4 or 5 kings were commonplace and modest then. The most famous reference to larger alliances is given to us by one Mari letter. There is no king strongest by himself. 10 or 15 kings follow Hammurabi of Babylon, and so for Rimsin of Larsa, and so for Ibel Piel of Eshnuna, and also for Amut Piel of Katna. But 20 kings follow Yaram Lim of Yamhad, that is Aleppo. What is more, it's only in this particular period, 2000 to 1700 BC, that the eastern realm of Elam intervened extensively in the politics of Mesopotamia. So this is the only time that Elam ever intervened in the politics of Mesopotamia. Very important. With its armies, and sent its envoys far west into Syria and Katna. Never again did Elam follow such wide-reaching policies. So in terms of geopolitics, the Eastern Alliance in Genesis 14 must be treated seriously as an archaic memory preserved in the existing book of Genesis. Moreover, envoys from Mari went regularly to Hazor and Canaan. Okay, so I wanted to make mention here that Melchizedek can be firmly situated, and Abraham and this particular suzerain vassalship that Elam had hegemony over during the time of Abraham in Lower Levant. So this is important, and I wanted to bring this to your attention. You can read this here in Kenneth Kitchen's text on the reliability of the Old Testament, and also Walter Kaiser, his history of Israel. You can look at his work. This is really good too. Okay, so this will kind of give you an idea. This area over here would be ancient Elam here, where Kedorlaomer came from, and Amraphel, he's going to be from primarily this Babylonian area, and Tidal's going to be from somewhere up here. So we have these 4 kings here, with Kedorlaomer being the suzerain, and they come all the way down here against these 5 kings down here, Sodom and Gomorrah, and Zeboim, and Admah, and whatever. We have these 5 kings down here by the Dead Sea, and they serve Kedorlaomer for 12 years in vassalship. That meant that every year they were, they would be giving a portion of their goods to their vassal who would protect them. They would be in a covenant relationship, just like Abraham was master of covenant there in Hebron with Mamre and Aner, and so likewise the Kedorlaomer was. He was the master, though, of the covenant over this whole area. So he was quite some character here. And anyhow, he came to in the 14th year. 13th year they rebelled. 14th year he showed up with his other alliances, and then he went south of them and secured. He went to this side down here and came up, and then came back here, and just shored up anyone, all the Rephaims, the Zuzims, and these are all remnants of the giants that the text will pick up later here, and they were defeated by Kedorlaomer and his company, and then he came back, and then they fought against Sodom and Gomorrah, and then they took them all captive, all the way up here to Hobab here, okay, which is, it said, to the left of Damascus here. So here's Damascus here, and so or Hobab's up here somewhere. I can't. My eyes can't read this completely. Clearly. Excuse me. But anyhow, but Hobab is to the north of Damascus, and so Abraham comes back up and recovers Lot and defeats in an extraordinary war. I mean, we're only talking. What he had 318 men, so all the other men that came with Aner and Mamre and and Eshcol, that I don't know how many more they had, but I'm sure there maybe 1,000 people at the most. I don't know, but it said that when Abraham divided himself against the forces of Kedorlaomer at night, and they all took off running, and then he recovered all the substance. So we'll move on. So we can see here another thing here from the Holman Bible Atlas. In the green here, it will tell you how he came down here. The Rephaim, the Zuzim, Emim, the Horites, Amalekites here, and so the battle was taking place down here. And then they fled back up here to Hobah, or towards Hobah. It's going even north here from here. Okay, so this just gives you an idea geographically, kind of what's going on, so that you can understand the text a little better. It's nice to have a little geography here with it. So I put that in there for your benefit. Okay, so when we come here to Psalm 110, this is the other important text for the Old Testament where we have a mention of Melchizedek. And here at the end of verse 4. But we'll go ahead and read this. A mitzmor, it's a Psalm of David. A declaration of Yahweh to my Lord. Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Yahweh shall send forth the rod of your strength from Zion. Rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people will be willing in the day of your strength. In the splendor of holiness, from the womb of the dawn, you shall have the dew of your youth. So that's some pretty radical poetic language there here in verse 3, in these diastichs. And then it will go to verse 4, and it says, Yahweh has sworn, and he will not relent. Ata kohen le'olam, you are a priest forever. Al divrati Melchizedek, okay, according to we'll just say the order of Melchizedek. The Lord is at your right hand. He will smite through kings on the day of his anger. He will judge the nations. Corpses shall feel them. That means these nations. And he will smite through the head upon the great earth. I guess that's how we're going to translate Eretz Rabbah. And he will drink from the brook in the way. Therefore, he shall lift up, we'll just say, his head. Okay? All right, so this is the other, this royal messianic psalm here, and note here that this has to do with war. Okay? This is all about the co-regent of Yahweh, this future messianic king whom David calls, it says here, the declaration of Yahweh to my Lord. So you have David, who is the king, and he says that in this, we'll say this is some type of vision, that Yahweh spoke to David's Lord, okay, his Adon, okay, his Adoni, all right, and so this Adoni here is going to be the future messianic ruler, okay? And Yahweh says for this one to sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet, okay? And then it says that Yahweh will send forth the rod of your strength from Zion, rule in the midst of your enemies. And then it goes on here about basically talking about how this future messianic king is also a priest according to Melchizedek. So this is where David makes his own midrash on Genesis chapter 14. And so because David knew that, because David chose the city of Jerusalem where he's reigning from, and that when he read the Old Testament text, Melchizedek was a prior king that was there for, we don't know how long, but he was there in Salem, which is an ancient name for Jerusalem. And so it was a kingly priest. And so that's David wanted that. I mean, David wanted to even wear, to have on an ephod upon himself cultically, but he wasn't allowed to ultimately. And you can see that David really wanted to be a priest as well, but that was not allowed according to Mosaic legislation. That was a part of the Aaronids. They were the priests. And the Levites, they assisted Aaron and his sons in the priesthood. And But Melchizedek was a figure who was both king and priest, and that's what David picks up on this ancient memory of Melchizedek back in Genesis 14, and he says that the future Lord is going to be both king and priest, and it's going to and this future messianic king will participate in a war, and this becomes huge at Qumran. Okay, and we're going to look at 11Q Melchizedek. All right, we're gonna look at this text here because it has a lot to say with this association here. And we'll see some other texts. But I wanted to also we need to bring up this text here, here out of the Gospel of John. And it says here, speaking about, this is Jesus talking, your father Abraham rejoiced in order that he might see my day, and he saw and rejoiced. Therefore, the Jews said to him, you're not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham? And Jesus said to them, Amen, amen, lego humin, prin Avraham, genesthai, ego eimi. Before Abraham was, I am. So and this is then when they wanted to pick up stones and kill him, because he's making himself out to be Yahweh. Okay, that's for sure. Going back to Exodus chapter 3, and before Abraham was, I am. This is, so he's claiming divinity. But you need to see here that it says that Jesus says that Abraham saw my day and rejoiced. Well, what day was that? What day is he talking about? Okay. Well, this may have something to do with Melchizedek. And that's going to be my spin. So I'm tipping my hat, looking at where I'm going to be going with the text. I am not going to follow the Zeitgeist interpretation. I'm following the text. I'm not going to water down the text and whittle down whatever Hebrews has to say on its midrash. Okay, because wait till you read here what Qumran has to say. Qumran has a lot in common with what Hebrews has to say about Melchizedek. So this is going to be important for us. So we needed to look at these texts here. Very, very, very important. But Psalm 110 is what it's doing. It's equating the future Messiah as a king, but also as incorporating the priesthood as well. So that's what this does. And then that causes Qumran, and it causes the author of Hebrews to go back and say, well, who is this Melchizedek? Are you following me? And then they create their own midrashes, both the midrash that we have from Qumran and the midrash that occurs here in Hebrews chapter 7 verses 1 through 10 that we're in right now. So okay. All right, so coming here to William Lane here, and he's going to give us a way in which to enter the text here, and to look at the text from a scholarly perspective, so that we can enter it and glean something from the text that's very, very helpful. The presentation of Melchizedek in 7:1-10 assumes the form of a homiletical midrash, in which the exposition of Scripture determines the structure of the argument. The unit exhibits 5 characteristics of this distinctive form. The point of departure for interpretation is the Old Testament text. Okay, so number 1 here he has the point of departure is the Old Testament text. 2, the exposition is homiletical in nature. Okay. 3, the writer is attentive to the analysis of the details of the text. 4, the text is made relevant to the current situation through interpretation. And 5, the point of interest, we got to change that. The point of interest is the narrative account, not merely the characters themselves. The clear allusion to Psalm 110:4 in the description of Christ as the heavenly high priest in 6:20 set the stage for the midrash that follows. In 7:1-10, the writer introduces Genesis 14:17-20 to identify Melchizedek of Psalm 110:4. Very, very, very good little intro there that he gives. And to exhibit the basis and history for the superiority of his priesthood over the Levitical priesthood. Okay, so the superiority of Melchizedek's own priesthood, that is Melchizedek himself. Melchizedek's priestly nature is of a superior nature than Aaron's priesthood. The basis of the midrash is the hermeneutical principle of gezerah shava. That is, if 2 separate passages of Scripture contain the same word, the verbal analogy provides a sufficient reason for explaining one text in light of the other. The dominant text of in 7:1-10 is Genesis 14:7-20, but in chapter 7 as a whole, Genesis 14:17-20 is subordinated to Psalm 110. So basically what he's saying, the gezerah shava is all over Melchizedek, okay? Because, Genesis 14 and Psalm 110, the key word is Melchizedek, and that's what binds the two together, and that creates the basis for the midrash that follows here, that he creates. Okay, so these 5 points are, he's going to create the midrash because he has 2 texts that have a verbal analogy, and then one's going to give in light of the other. So then, so both Qumran is creating their midrash, and so is the book of Hebrews, and they do have a lot that they share in common. We will see that. But first of all, we want to stick to the text. But Selene, as usual, he's an excellent scholar. I don't always agree with him, and I definitely don't agree with him on his whole interpretation of this text. But he was a superior scholar. He's gone on to be with the Lord now. But let's just go. We'll focus here on the first 3 verses. Okay, so what I have here is I have a structural analysis that kind of is going to then highlight the points that come out of Hebrews 7:1-3. And the reason why we focus on Hebrews 7:1-3 is because it's one big long sentence. So it is going to it's going to have its own focus, which is definitely going to be separate from verse 4, which is going to be a little different. But let's look at where we've come from here, okay? So we're in this big section here, Jesus, the great high priest, that began in 4:11 and extends all the way to 10:39. And we looked in the last number of weeks at the admonition, exhortation, and exposition concerning apathy, apostasy, and assurance that we saw in 5:11 to 6:20. Okay, so maybe this needs to be 5:11 here. Okay, we may need to change that 5:11 to 10:39. That may be a little typo. Okay. But we're looking here then at then point B, Christ priesthood according to the order of Melchizedek. All right, and that's going to take up the whole chapter of 7. Okay, and then the chapter is going to then be further divided down here in 1 to 10. So we'll get the B in the next section, picking up in verse 11. Okay, so what are we looking at here in this text of 7:1 to 10? It is the midrash on Melchizedek's eternality and priesthood. That is what when we read through the text, and especially when we read through this again, the midrash is on Melchizedek's personal nature, and it's on Melchizedek's eternality and priesthood. And we'll see this because we have the baseline here for this Melchizedek remains a priest forever. That is the baseline text. Everything else, as I said, is filler vis-a-vis apposition, or beginning here in 3 as circumstantial adverbial participial clauses that fill out the main verb mene here, that are descriptive of mene. And then we have a relative clause here, and we have a little relative clause here, okay, which just reinforces all the stuff in between here, okay. And we need to see that this text is created, like I said before, very, very artistically. And since it's artistically created like this is theologically loaded. If you can't look at this and see all of this filler, this is so highly theologically written. It is loaded with meaning just by the way it's constructed. Okay, just the construction of the text alone has tons of theology, because it shows you how much thought that went into the construction of this text. And so when you actually do exegesis, this is why you're going to come to a title called the Midrash on Melchizedek's eternality and priesthood. Okay, it's because that's what the text is focusing on. We're not eisegetes. Okay, we're not of the zeitgeist interpreters of the day, just following whatever wind's blowing, whatever cool. I'm following the text. I'm not following winds. Okay, let's follow the text. The text is very, very artistically, highly theologically written. Okay, and it's going to bear itself out. Okay, so we'll pick this up. So this for 4. Okay, so this is a basis statement based primarily upon 6:20. Okay, that Christ, he's the forerunner who entered in, behind the veil. Jesus, he's a high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. And then it says, for this Melchizedek, all right? So now he's talking about the person of Melchizedek. So let's look at how he then appositionally fills out this Melchizedek. Well, he's also the king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, and also then he's, through a substantive participle here, we got another extended appositional bifurcated double use of the of a substantive participle with this one controlling definite article here, ha. Okay. The one who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings, and who blessed him, that is, who blessed Abraham, to whom also Abraham parted a tenth of all. Then we have this phrase here, proton men. So we got to look here at proton men, and we need to look at peta de. First on the one hand, and then on the other. So there's this men de construction here, then with this adverbial use of the neuter proton here. This correlates and separates different thoughts. So it says, first on the one hand, being interpreted king of righteousness, and then on the other hand, king of Salem, which is king of peace. Being apator, amator, okay, being without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but having been made like to the Son of God, he abides a priest forever, or continually. Boom. There's your sentence, this periodic sentence. And so let's just look through what we just read. So we have this midrash, okay, and I titled it Melchizedek's Eternality and Priesthood. I'm just following the text. Just if this is adverse to you, just hang with it, okay? Just listen to this text. Let it breathe for itself. So we have a name. So we have Melchizedek. We have royal titles, King of Salem, Priest of the Most High God, and then it narrates the Melchizedek's encounter with Abraham, talking about his meeting and blessing, and then Abraham's tithe. Okay, and then it goes into the meaning of Melchizedek's royal name and title. Melchizedek means Melchizedek, king of righteousness. King of Salem means king of peace. And then verse 3, Melchizedek's divinity and priestly eternality. Okay, Melchizedek's divinity and comparative Christological nature. So we have all these alpha words here, deprivative, without father, without mother, without genealogy, right? So without father, mother, genealogy. And then if that's not enough, see, this is where the text, this is where you cross the line. Okay, once the author goes here, meta arcane hemeron, meta zoes telos ekon. Once the author goes here, then he's going beyond the typical zeitgeist interpretation. If it just ended here, apator, amator, agenial logetos. If it just ended there, we could probably skate with the typical Zeitgeist interpretation that Melchizedek appears on stage without a genealogy and without any mention of a mother or a father. Okay, so boom, you could probably get away with that. But once he goes here, meta arcane hemeron, meta zoes telos echon, which all are, you got to remember, this here echon, this is an adverbial participle that modifies mene. And if you're going to look at the uses of adverbial participles, they're either causal, conditional, means, manner, result, or purpose. Well, it's obvious here that we should translate this since or because. Since he's without father, since he's without mother, since he's without a genealogy, since he has no beginning of days, and since he has no end of life, and then we're going to look at this last participle here is going to be, I would say, a participle not of causality, of causal, but it's going to be one of means. But having been made like the Son of God, by means of being made like the Son of God, he abides. So this last comparison is going to have a little adversative nature with de. Okay, once we come down here, aphomoi omenos de, but by means of being made like to the Son of God, he abides a priest forever. So it's further, defining and detailing how the main verb mene, it's descriptive of the main verb here. So I would take these elliptically. We have to stick in own here, right here before apator and amator. So we have own, and then that is going to then be in close association here with echon here. All right, neither having beginning of days or end of life, but and then this here is going to be the third participle here of adverbial use that is all coloring mene. Okay, and I would say to you that aphomoimenos de is going to then pick up on the means, the participle of means, and it's going to really ground what it means that for this Melchizedek abides a priest forever. Okay, so that is once you look at this, we're talking about it's a divine character here in the scripture, absolutely without contradiction, because if it just had these first three here, father, mother, genealogy, you can get away with it. But once you add on not beginning of days, end of life, but made like the Son of God, well, of course he has to be made like the Son of God, because Melchizedek in his pre-incarnate form couldn't be incarnate, so it has to be made like, because you can't have Melchizedek showing up in incarnation form. That only happened once in history. So of course it has to be, it's a comparison made like the Son of God. So it's a Christophany, it's appearance of Christ somehow in some form, a prototype of the incarnation. So this is how you understand this comparative use here. When we come here down here, but made like unto the Son of God. That's how you're to understand that. You can't have Christ showing up in an incarnation before he was incarnated. Of course not. So it has to be he's made like. Okay. So obviously, if you haven't picked up on it, I'm taking Melchizedek as a Christophany of an appearance of Christ in the Old Testament. And I'm doing this primarily based upon Dalet, He, and Vav, okay, especially on Dalet and He, because it says that Melchizedek was without beginning of days and without end of life. Well, that's it. It's over. It's over at that point, because that's going over the top. It's going beyond, just, that you could literally, as a product of literature, look at Melchizedek that he doesn't talk about his father, doesn't talk about his mother, doesn't talk about his genealogy. You can get away with that in a literary sense, but once you go here, it's over. Exegetically, okay. If you want to be a part of the Eisegesis crowd, then you can just water this. No longer exists. This is just fanciful writing. Doesn't mean anything. Inspiration. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean anything. And then you're going to make up something. You're going to downplay then the comparison here. But you got to remember, what does the Old Testament say in Daniel 17:13? It says this. Kevar Enosh, right? All right. So we got Kevar Enosh in Aramaic in Daniel 7:13, like the Son of Man. Well, Jesus is the Son of Man, but it says one like the Son of Man. So this Ke is going to then play into against your interpretation here of how you downplay like the Son of God here. So Jesus is like he's like the Son of Man, but everybody equates the Son of Man in Daniel 7:13 with Jesus. Okay, just like when you go now, get this. You've got moion, right? Huion, anthropu, okay? In Revelation 14:14, you got one like the Son of Man. Well, that is Jesus in Revelation 14 sitting on a cloud and reaps the earth, okay, of the wheat. All right, boom. That's all. That's a given. So you cannot sit here and downplay this use here. This is just it has to be made like the Son of God because when this is talking about the incarnation. So this is Melchizedek is a Christophany before Christ took on human flesh. So it can't be the same, but he had some similar prototype form in his appearance whenever Melchizedek, that is Jesus, that's his name here, when he appears as the king and priest of Salem. Okay, so that's sticking with the text, that's sticking with the language of this text. I don't care I'm just looking at the book of Hebrews in isolation from everything else. This is why the title for my channel here is Biblical Theology. Okay, Biblical Theology. That's why I wanted to have that in what I'm doing here. Okay, we're looking at what Hebrews is doing. I could care less what anyone, but Hebrews is the only, by the way, Hebrews is the only one in the New Testament that deals with Melchizedek. So maybe besides what we saw in John 8, about Christ telling that, hey, Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it. Well, what day is he talking about? Well, this is probably the day that Abraham saw Christ's day, and that was Melchizedek, okay? It's all, just stick with the text. How can your literary figure remain a priest forever? You have to own that, okay? It's not, it's talking about the person of Melchizedek. It remains a priest forever. So what does that mean to you? It doesn't mean anything to you. It's just, it's all washed away in your use of typology, okay? I'm not doing that. I'm sticking with the text. I'm owning the text, okay? And once you get here in these parallel statements here, without having neither beginning of days nor end of life, that's over. That's going over the top. That's now tipping the scale in the favor that he's talking about, that Melchizedek is a divine figure. Okay, that is how you have to interpret this. And if you don't, then you're an eisegete. And then you're going to import on top of this the priesthood. So you don't read Melchizedek. Now you're just reading priesthood. It's all typology. Doesn't mean anything. It's just literary fluff. If you want to get a good dose of this, just read David Allen. Okay, and he is your typical zeitgeist interpreter. Okay. And he's wrong on way too many things in the book of Hebrews, like we just saw on the apostasy, okay? It's just, oh my gosh, I don't even want to go there. We'll move on. Okay, so now owning the text, okay? So owning the text diagrammatically, okay, so we're going to have here on the pedestal gar here, and then we're going to have our baseline here, ha Melchizedek, and then we'll put hutos, and we have all of this, either it's appositional phrases here that we have to stick in for Melchizedek, and a couple of subordinate relative clauses, as here, in here. But the baseline is Melchizedek, this Melchizedek, mene hierus eista di e nekes. Okay, for this Melchizedek abides a priest forever. So that lets you know that the main text talks about the eternality of Melchizedek. Boom. So that's important. So if you, this is where exegesis reigns. This eisegesis, they left this. They don't want to deal with the diagrammatical structure because it is going to cause them way too many problems. So let's pick up on this. Let's continue with this. Let's look at the adverbial participles here. We have to have an elliptical on here. Okay, we have ekon and we have apho moi omenos here. Okay, so we're going to have three adverbial participles that are modifying the main verb mene, okay? And like we said, that these adverbial participles are either causal, conditional, means, manner, result, or purpose, okay? And so what works best here, especially with apator, amator, agene, logetos, is causal, okay? You want to use causal. For this Melchizedek, since he is without father, without mother, without genealogy, he abides a priest forever. That works perfectly. Let's continue with ekon. For this Melchizedek, since he has neither beginning of days nor end of life, abides a priest forever. Perfect. Causal use here. So, once you look at the causal use, I mean, your exegesis is going to lead exactly towards the eternality of Melchizedek, because it's all supporting the main verb. It's modifying the main verb. And then we have this ekon de apho moi omenos, and we have this adversative here. So we have, for this Melchizedek, being because he's being without father, without mother, without genealogy, and because he has neither beginning of days or end of life, but, all right, and then we're going to use but having become likened by means, by means he became like the Son of God. So I think once we come here to this adversative, I think we're going to switch from causal to means. So having been made like the Son of God, he remains. So this is then going to color mene here. So since he's become like, or by means of having been made like the Son of God, he abides a priest forever. And so this helps us understand mene a little bit better. So once you look here at the adverbial use here of these participles, and this one elliptically, that becomes the basis of how really then it colors mene and it supports mene, especially apator. But this apator is supported here by this particular adverbial participial clause, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. Okay, but by means having been made like the Son of God. It reinforces the whole idea of the eternality of Melchizedek here. And then we come back up here with the nominative adverbial, or the appositional clauses here of the subject, Melchizedek. He's king of Salem, priest of the Most High God. So here's one adverbial use, second adverbial use, and then 3 and 4, the one who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings, the one who blessed him. So we have these. This is all conjoined here by a substantival use of the participle, where ha's two-timing for sunon tesos, the aorist participle, and then we have another aorist, eulogesos, here. Okay, and then we have this relative clause, to whom Abraham parted a tenth of all. So that this is just coloring in the narrative part here. And then we have another adjectival participle here that is modifying Melchizedek, which being interpreted as king of righteousness. Okay, no, we got to remember, we're looking at this proton men epeta de construction here. So it's itemizing out, parceling out the thoughts into units, which on the one hand first is being interpreted king of righteousness, and then king of Salem, that is king of peace. So like most people understand, you cannot, if your kingship has to be dominated first by righteousness, and righteousness then produces peace. So you get peace by means of righteousness being enforced first, and that's the testimony here of Melchizedek. This is all about Melchizedek, his name, his titles, and so you can't. This is not talking about the priesthood, the Melchizedekian priesthood. No, this is talking about Melchizedek, and these are all appositional phrases here that are equating to what Melchizedek is further interpretively. Okay, so this isn't about no priesthood. This is all about the person Melchizedek. For this Melchizedek remains a priest forever. So he is eternal. Okay, and we know this because he has no beginning of days or end of life, and he's made like to the Son of God. So, I mean, you could even use this not as a means, but even as a causal, because he's made like the Son of God. That needs a little finesse there on the last one, but anyhow, these two here are best understood as causal. Absolutely, no other use of the adverbial use would do better than causal, because it's all undergirding mene, the eternality. Okay, this is a present this is a present a present verb. Okay, so he abides. Okay, it didn't say Melchizedek used to abide as. It's not past tense. This is all present tense, which speaks of eternality. Okay, so this is why we look and interpret the Bible the way I did. The text went there, so I went there. Who cares about what theology it throws into? What if you don't like it? Who cares? The Bible is an equal opportunity offender. Okay, just follow the text, and if you don't like it, take it up with the text. But once you look at the text here, diagrammatically, it reinforces the strength of the argument. This is called exegesis. This is bringing out of the text what's actually in it. The Zeitgeist interpretation of the typical other interpreters, I won't mention names anymore, but they're not interpreting the text. They're just they're not doing this. They're not doing exegesis. They're just they want to go into theology. Okay, but I'm into biblical theology. What does the text of Hebrews have to say? And this is what it's got to say. Okay, so now we're going to come here, and we are going to look here at some manuscript evidence here that, and this is 11Q Melchizedek. Okay. All right, Melchizedek. My space ran out here. 4Q. Okay, so my old James A. Sanders, he was my prophet at Claremont. He was an 11. He was an 11Q man. He interpreted the Psalm scroll from Qumran, Cave 11. So he was a Cave 11 man. And James was a, I owe a lot to James. He really informed a lot of my theology, especially on intertextuality and comparative midrash, and also then we had classes on the Dead Sea Scrolls, of course, and he is a scrollster, and he's a preeminent scholar. But anyhow, this just so happens this text comes from his cave, but he wasn't the translator of it. But we're going to look at this 11QMelchizedek. Okay, and then the princeps, the main authority here for the translation of 11Q Melchizedek. We are going to find this here, 13. Okay, and this is a Oxford Press text, and it's the official translations. Discoveries in the Judean Desert, Volume 23, Qumran, Cave 11, Part 2, and then we have the editors here, and specifically Florentino Garcia Martinez. He's going to be our man here for 11Q Melchizedek, and okay, so coming here to this particular transcription of the scrolls, we're going to try to read our way through here best I can through this particular scroll here, and glean whatever information we can from it. So it begins off here in what he has is verse 2 here. Va'asher amar bishnat hayobel hazot, tashuvu ish el achuzat to, ve'alav amar. So we'll just stop there. I think that'd be a good place to stop. And it says, and what he said in this year of the Jubilee, you shall return each one to his possession. And concerning it, he says this, Devar ha-Shemitah, this is the matter of the release. And then we have Shemot Kol Baal Mashe Yad, okay. It's the matter of the release. Every master of the lending, or should say that every creditor shall release, or this is the infinitive absolute, shall release the hand which he lends Bere'ehu, his neighbor, and lo Yagosh here, lo Yagosh et Re'ehu ve'et Achav, right? Achiv, ki kara Shemitah, all right? So we pick up here, you shall return each one to his possession, and concerning it, he says, this is the matter of the Shemitah. Every creditor shall release the hand which he lends his neighbor. He shall not exact his neighbor, nor his brother, for a Shemitah is called for God, and that's basically following the text there of that's Deuteronomy 15 here. So what he does here, he in this year of the Jubilee. So you got to remember, Qumran is all into the times, okay, the times of Jubilee. Everything's divided periodically according to the Jubilee year. in Qumran. So he begins here with a text out of Leviticus 25, I think 13, where it picks up the text about the year of Jubilee. And so he's using this text. This is all a midrash. This is Qumran works just like the book of Hebrews does. Okay, he's going to pick up a little bit of this verse, he's going to mix it with that verse, and he's going to create his own interpretation. So just like what's going on in the book of Hebrews is going on here. So this is typical, midrashic exegesis of the apostolic period, from which the Jews of that time belong. So this is typical exegetical practice. Just look at Richard Longenecker for this. So then he goes from the Jubilee year, and then he goes to the year of release in the 7th year. That you'll find that in in the Book of the Covenant. I think it's Exodus 23. You'll find it there. The use of the term Shemitah there, or Shamat, the verbal use of it at least. And so he picks up here where in the 7th year it's to be like, just like on the 7th day you rest. Okay, well in the 7th year you rest from all of your loans that you've made out, that you're a creditor, and you're not going to be gathering any money of interest from anybody in the 7th year. That year it's a holiday. Okay, it's the year that you cannot collect on your debts or whatever you have going on, your investments. It's all released, and it's a temporary release. It's suspended. The 50th year is when it all gets eliminated. So everything goes back to the original people. So that's a great way of the way that God created human governments to exist. It's really awesome. The way that God set that up is pretty cool. The year Jubilee. But here he picks up the theme of the Jubilee years, and then the year of Shemitah, the 7-year release. For that 7th year, not the finalizing debt. That would be the Jubilee. So you got to, once you start reading this text and you're going, oh wow, this is really Qumranian. They're all into, these time frames here that are present in the Pentateuch. And so this is how they're thinking theologically, is through the year of Jubilees, and then the Shemitah of Deuteronomy 15 is going to become very important as well. It's just another part of the whole systemization of the Jubilee year. Okay, so it's talking of that there's going to be this release here in the this Shemitah year here, and that there is proclaimed Kara Shemitah Le'el, for God. Okay, I think back in the original text it's for Ladonai, for the Lord. And then we have our famous, this famous term Pishro, its interpretation. What is for the latter days, concerning the captives who, and then we have a lacuna in the text, and whose teachers have been hidden and kept secret, and from the inheritance of Melchizedek. All right, so we have here the mention of Melchizedek right here. Okay, and this is why this text here is called, 11QMelchizedek. All right. And so we have this Nachalat Melchizedek, from from the inheritance of Melchizedek. For they are the Nachalat Melchizedek, for they are the inheritance of Melchizedek, who shall cause them to return, I guess, and he will call them to liberty, and he shall proclaim a liberty to them. Yeah, and he shall proclaim liberty to them. All right, so that's real important, okay? Because now you're proclaiming liberty to them, and to release them from the mashe, from the debt, kol avonotehem, I guess, from all of their iniquities. And then we have, and thus the word shall be. And then it says, in the first week of the Jubilee, after the 9 Jubilees, okay, that is the Day of Atonement, the end of the 10th Jubilee, to make atonement on it for all of the B'nai Or, and the Anshe Goral, okay, and for all of the men of the lot of Melchizedek, okay, and then we have this lacuna here going on, but let's just we need to just stop right there here, and so this is going to pick up here to proclaim a release to them. So this is going to pick up in Isaiah. This is going to pick up some of this Isaianic language here from chapter 61, proclaiming liberty to the captives and all of this, and picking up some of this whole. They love this stuff. I mean, but you need to say they are the inheritance of Melchizedek. So they're treating Melchizedek here as a messianic figure, because this language here proclaiming, release to the, liberty to them, to the captives. All right. Liberty to the captives here. Okay. So what other ancient text mentions that the Messiah is going to release the those who are taken captive and proclaiming liberty? That's Jesus's first sermon, okay, in Nazareth, all right, or whatever, going back there to the Gospels. I mean, you have the account of Christ in the Gospel of Luke they're opening up the scroll, and he proclaims this. So whatever Jesus is doing, the crowd at Qumran has Melchizedek doing. Their Melchizedek is the Messiah. Okay, so look at even at Vandervood here. Melchizedek als himmlische Erlösergestalt in den neu gefundenen eschatologischen midrashim aus Qumran Hola 11. Okay, Melchizedek as the heavenly redeemer in the newly founded eschatological midrashim out of Qumran Cave 11. So this is the an eschatological redeemer. Okay, he's a heavenly redeemer from the eschatological midrashim. So this is awesome. Okay, so Qumran is taking Melchizedek and turning him into a heavenly eschatological figure who proclaims liberty. Same thing that Jesus is doing. Okay, so and then he causes them to return, and he proclaims liberty to them and releases them from the burdens of their iniquities. So this Moshe here is not so much talking now about physical debts financially, but their debts in terms of hamartiology, of their sins, that he's releasing them from their sins. So their Melchizedek is their heavenly redeemer, and so the New Testament looks at Jesus as the same way. Okay, he's the one who's releasing us from the debts of our sins. So that's so important here. And then we come here to verse 7. Okay, this is going to now take up other language. Okay, Bishu Vua Hayovel Harishon Achar Tishar Hayovelim, right? Biyom HaKipporim Hahu Sof Hayovel Ha'ashiri Likaperbo All Kol B'nai Or V'anshe Goral Melchizedek. All right. So let's just look at this. Let's just look at this particular next set of words here. And in the first Jubilee, after the 9 Jubilees, that is the Day of Atonement, the end of the 10th Jubilee, okay, to make atonement on it for all of the sons of light and for the sons of the lot of for the men of the lot of Melchizedek. So there you go. Melchizedek is coming back at the end of at the 10th Jubilee, and this is it. This is the how they break down history here. So this is their messianic figure. This is the only way you can interpret it. And then here you have here in verse 9, Hakates Lishnat Haratzon, okay. So here we have, and that is the time, or it's the end of the year of favor. Some people say the year of grace, but the year of favor for Melchizedek and for his hosts, the people, for the holy people of God. All right, so Melchizedek, he is this is their messianic figure here. He is a heavenly redeemer. Okay, and he's coming here at the end of the Jubilees to square up and bring liberty to those bound in their iniquities. Okay, and believe me, it comes into a war here too. Okay, to those the people of God, and for the rule of judgment, just as it is written concerning him in the songs of David, right? Which who says, okay, in the songs of David, who says, that is David, God has taken his stand in the assembly of God, in the midst of the gods he shall judge. And concerning him he says, and unto it, return on high. God shall judge the peoples, and whom he says, how long shall you judge injustice, and you respect the face of the, you have respect upon the wicked. Its interpretation concerns Belial, and concerns the spirits of his lot, in turning aside from the statutes of God to do wickedness. And Melchizedek shall arise, or shall take vengeance, the judgments of God, in that day. All right, we got to go on here to the next one. In that day, he shall deliver them from the hand of Belial and from the hand of all of the spirits of his lot. I'm just telling you. And in his aid are all of the gods of righteousness. And he, the text is a little bit broken here. This is that day of peace, which he says by the hand of Isaiah the prophet, who says how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the midrashic, that is the evangelist or the messenger, who proclaims peace, proclaiming good things, proclaiming salvation, says to Zion, your God reigns. Its interpretation, the mountains are the prophets, the text is broken here. The messenger, the midrashic, the evangelist, is the anointed one of the Spirit, just as he says in Daniel concerning him, what is this? Unto the what is this? This is the anointed prince. Okay. The anointed prince, and this is the 70 weeks, right? Yeah, so this is all about until the 70 weeks, the anointed prince, I guess he comes, and the midrashic, all right? Good things, proclaiming salvation that is written concerning him, to comfort those who are burdened. Its interpretation is to give insight in all of the times, or all the times of the time periods of eternity in truth. And then we have this big lacuna, and to turn aside from Belial, okay, and then we have something about, and you shall turn, and something in the judgments of God, just as it is written concerning him, saying to Zion, your God reigns, and that is the congregation of the sons of righteousness. They are those who establish the covenant, who turn aside from walking in the way of the people, and he is your God, Melchizedek, who shall deliver them from the hand of Belial, and he says that the shofar shall be, you shall cause the shofar to be passed through all the land. Okay, the text kind of breaks off there, but you can get the point here, that their Melchizedek is the Messiah, who delivers them from their iniquities, and it's all periodically, divided into the year of Jubilees according to their calendrical system of 364 days or something like that. So a lot can be said about that. I'm not really big on all the Jubilee stuff, but it's definitely a part of their theology. which is biblically based. But definitely here, you even have this statement down here that Melchizedek here is definitely referred to as a heavenly figure. And that he's divine. I mean, he takes up this Psalm 82, and it refers to Melchizedek, that he's sitting in the congregation of all of the sons of righteousness. Those are the ones. These are the hosts of Melchizedek, and Melchizedek takes his stand in the council of the gods, and he's presented as God himself. And some people read this, Melchizedek, he is your God. So I know there's lacunas in this text, but this text definitely talks about Melchizedek delivering them from the hand of Belial, forgiving them from their sins, and it's at the end times. And so when you look at this, what does Qumran, how does Qumran interpret Melchizedek? Well, like Vandervoot said, he's some type of heavenly redeemer that's going to return again. So how do we get that? Well, you get that because David took up the topic of the future messianic king being also a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So Qumran created their own midrash here on Melchizedek, and they used Leviticus 25, Deuteronomy 15, Isaiah 61, Daniel chapter 9, the psalm here of Psalm 82, and you can't get any more. They turned Melchizedek into a divine figure. I'm sorry, that's what they did. Now, you can come here. I put this in for you. This is Florentino Garcia Martinez, his own translation. I want to try to work through the text myself, but he made use of it, and he has a good translation of it here. I have that for you. Okay, so you can take a look here and look at Martinez's interpretation here. And I don't know if I put down everything, but not both sides of that are the text is a little bit longer than what I have here. For what his words. But anyhow, it's here for your use. But I wanted the purpose of this is simply just to look at Melchizedek. So you have a first century account of that they divinitize Melchizedek, and so when we come here to Hebrew, it likewise divinitizes Melchizedek. Okay, and they attribute whatever they attributed to Melchizedek, we attributed to Christ. So voila, there's your interpretation right there. It's pretty much, man, you just, okay, well, cool, okay, well, Qumran did the same thing. They saw in Melchizedek that he was going to be their heavenly redeemer, and that's who Christ is. So this is contemporary, epigraphical evidence of somebody divinitizing Melchizedek, exactly what the author of Hebrews did. He divinitized Melchizedek, said he has not beginning of days or end of life. He abides a priest forever. It's going to continue here. Let's look at here in 7:4. But see how great, all right? So this, we'll take this as imperative. But see how great this one is, to whom Abraham gave a tenth of the top of the heap. That is the patriarch. Okay, I mean that's actually top of the heap here. But so let's look at verse 4 here again. But see how great this one is, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave a tenth of all the spoils. And then when we come here to verse 5, we're going to have here a men de construction. Okay, so verses 5 and 6 are going to be paralleling one another. They're going to be making a compare and contrast statement. Okay, the men de. All right, so let's come up here to look at this. We have a call to attention, that is see. Okay, and what are you seeing? It's the greatness of Melchizedek as compared to Abraham. Okay, that's what's going on here. See how great this one is. To whom? So this relative clause here is then going to give us some narratological information about how great he is, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave a tenth of all the spoils. Okay, all right. And then we're going to have a comparison of Melchizedek to the Aaronic priesthood in verses 5 to 6. This takes up this men de construction. And those, okay, so we need to come over here and we pick up Lamban non-test. But those on the one hand, okay, who received the priesthood of the sons of Levi have commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law. And then it says that is explanatory, that is their brethren, who came out of the loins of Abraham. Okay, and then we come here to 6. But the one who does not have a genealogy from them received tithes from Abraham, and he blessed the one who had the promises. So here you have the comparison of Melchizedek to the Aaronic priesthood. You have the inferiority of the Aaronids through descent. That's verse 5. Okay? And then you have the comparative superiority of Melchizedek to Abraham, and it defines that by receiving tithes from Abraham, and that he blessed Abraham. Okay? All right, and then this is going to lead into verse 7, into this maxim: apart from all contradiction, the lesser is blessed by the greater. So this comes into this Calva Omer maxim, that the greater one blesses the lesser one. Okay, so the lesser is blessed by the greater. You can say it through the passive voice. Okay, and then when you come to 8, let's come down here to verse 8, comparative mortal and immortal nature of the priests. Now this is sticking with the text. Now it's going to sound very odd to you who have all been, sucked into the Zeitgeist interpretation. But when you actually read the text, okay, when you come down to here to verse 8, all right, and then you have, and here, on the one hand, men who die receive tithes, but there, we shall just say Melchizedek is being testified that he lives. Okay, so do you get it here? So when you actually read the text and do exegesis and not eisegesis, you have the text talking about the mortal earthly nature of Aaron and his sons, compared to the immortal heavenly nature of Melchizedek. Now you get this. But here, this is earthly. This is where the author is, okay? Talking about, okay, but here, men who die receive tithes. But there, Melchizedek, well, we're supplying Melchizedek, is being testified that he lives. Okay, you can't come, this is the interpretation. It's the comparative mortal and immortal nature of the priests. Boom. Okay, and it's talking about Melchizedek's eternality, that he's still alive. Okay, all right. Now you come to 9 and 10 is the conclusion and basis statement of the inferiority of the Aaronic priesthood. So let's come down here to 9. And as so to speak, the one who received tithes, okay, we'll say here, and Levi, the one who received tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, for while yet he was in the loins of, we'll say, his father, when Melchizedek met him. Okay, so this whole statement here then reinforces the idea that the Aaronic priests are inferior to the Melchizedek priesthood, is because they die here on earth, but it's being testified that he lives there in heaven. And then it says, as it is said. So it's given a colloquial speech here, as it said. So it's, because now he has to get somewhat creative in his thinking, is that Levi, who receives tithes, paid tithes through the means of Abraham when he was yet in the loins of his father, when Melchizedek met him. So that's just setting up the whole nature of it. This comparison here and this contrast, that Melchizedek and his priesthood are for eternity, okay, and that they're undying. So you cannot read verse 8, but there. So where's the there? We've got here. We know where here is. It's where we are. But there. Okay, so what's there? So it's the heavenly nature of Melchizedek, and he's immortal. He doesn't die. See, down here, they die. Okay, but Melchizedek didn't die. We already know that back in verse 3, right? He's without beginning of days or end of life. So when you actually do exegesis, people, you interpret this the way, I guess, exegetes of a different era did, when people actually paid attention to the text. All right, and that's why I followed the text where it went. And this whole language here out of Qumran absolutely 100% underscores the writer of Hebrews. He shares the same idea that Melchizedek is a divine figure. Okay. And then we have here, some more structural analysis here. Text here. This one here showing the Mendek construction and the comparison here between the Aaronic priesthood versus the one who has no genealogy taken from them. Okay. And the lesser is blessed by the greater. And then this other Hodamen Akedeh, what we were just talking about. And here on the one hand, men who receive tithes who die, but there Melchizedek is being testified that he lives. So we have the mortal versus immortal, the and the ones who dies to the one that lives. There you go. Follow the text. It's pretty much it's pretty much a done deal there. My colleagues, I grew up, at one time I probably, I don't know if I ever took, I always believed this about this text. I always just followed the text. If you just stick with the text, this is how you'll come out. And I think my exegesis and explanation, and especially the assistance of Qumran, I think we've come to the conclusion that this is where the text leads us. And sorry for upsetting you, but I think if you stick with the text and not deal with your systematic theology, I think you'll do good. Be an exegete, not an eisegete. Until next time.